name is Carolyn Forestiere, and I am a political scientist. It's a pretty cool thing to be. But why am I a political scientist? When did this decision happen? Where did this come from? When I reflect on my life and the choices I made for my professional career, I realize that who I am and what I do can be traced back to two very important decisions that I made when I was in college. The first decision was to take Italian 101 when I was a freshman. I arrived on my college campus and I had to choose my courses, and I thought about taking the language. Now, I didn't need the language because I had already taken French in high school, but I was interested. My father's family had come from Italy in the 1950s as immigrants, and I had grown up listening to my family speak in Italian, yell in Italian, my Italian grandmother especially, and I was intrigued. We didn't learn Italian as children. We spoke English, and so this was something that I really wanted to do. And so when I got to my college, I signed up for Italian 101. And I started that class, and the professor was just wonderful. She was energetic and passionate. And not only did she imbue in me a passion for the Italian language, she gave me an idea of what good teaching was. And so I was very grateful. It's very early in my college career to have that experience. So I took Italian 101. I think I made a B. I wasn't necessarily gifted in languages, but I loved it. And so I kept going with it. I took 101, I took 102, I took 201, I took 202. By my first semester of my junior year, I was now in 301. And I went through that semester, and by the end of the semester in mid-December, I made the second very big decision that would impact the rest of my life. I called home and I told my parents that I wanted to study abroad the following semester. And I remember my parents saying, "But that's only 3 weeks from now." And I said, "Allora," which means so, and so we filled out the paperwork, and then I had my ticket to Italy. And I left for Italy in January of 1992, we arrived in Italy. So now this is our group. You can see the blue arrow, that's me. That's a younger and more well-rested version of myself. This is 27 years ago, and so here we are in Italy. And it was a wonderful experience. We arrived in Milan, and we made our way to Florence, where I would spend the next 3 months. But unbeknownst to me at the time, in 1992, Italy was going through a lot of political change. And there was an election that was happening in April of that year. So that when we arrived in Italy, we were in the middle of a campaign process, and imagery was positively everywhere. There were political images everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing it. Newspapers, brochures, TV, on walls. It was absolutely everywhere. And there was one particular image that struck me quite strongly, and it was this image. Now, anyone who is my age or older will immediately recognize this image, and probably other people too, as the ubiquitous symbol of communism, right? The yellow and the red and the hammer and sickle. This image was in many places as I was walking around Italy. I would be looking, and I'd be looking at this political imagery, and I would see this symbol. And I must confess that it startled me, because after all, Italy was a democracy. Italy was a capitalist country. It used a mixed economy. It was in Western Europe. What were large groups of communists doing in Italy? And I was confused and intrigued. And I will also confess that I was it made me a little afraid, because I was a kid who grew up during the Cold War. And it was almost like an Animal Farm. Capitalism good, communism bad. And so seeing this really startled me. And it was positively everywhere. You couldn't go places without seeing this imagery. And this was this 1992 brochure. This was the brochure that the Italian Communist Party put out with a quote from Karl Marx. And it was just really striking to me what this was. So when it came time for me to choose my coursework in Italy, I decided I would take a course in Italian politics. And I got involved in this course. And through that course, I learned two things. One, the communists weren't necessarily alone in terms of political parties, because Italy at that time used the proportional electoral system. And when you use a proportional electoral system, when a country uses one, the percentage of votes that a party receives roughly translates into the percentage of votes, the percentage of seats that the party will receive in the legislature. So even if a party receives, say, 5% of the votes, they'll receive roughly 5% of the seats. So that meant the communists were there were all sorts of political parties on the political spectrum. There were communists and socialists and social democrats and Christian Democrats and liberals and Republicans and even fascists. And all these different political ideologies were represented in the Italian political spectrum. And that made me very curious. That was very interesting to me. The second thing I learned through this class was that Italian communism wasn't really like your normal everyday Russian communism. It was different. It was Euro-communism. And it was compatible with democracy, and it was compatible with a mixed economy, but it advocated for a healthy dose of income redistribution and social protection, especially for workers. So this, for me, this was it. This was the spark. This was the moment for me that in my mind, like in terms of I don't know if before this moment I had been as acutely interested in something academic like this. I wanted to know as much as possible. So what did I do? I came back home, I changed my major to government, I used my senior year of college to make up all the requirements, and I took only government courses so that I could graduate on time. I enrolled in a master's program in Italian so I could better my Italian. I even got to go to Italy for a year. I got to play piano in a restaurant, which was really neat. That's a story for another time. And then it was really cool. And then I signed up for then I finished that master's, and then I enrolled in a PhD program for political science with an emphasis on comparative politics and Italian politics. And fast forward, and I even did a Fulbright to Italy in the year 2000, and fast forward to 2004 when I first arrived at UMBC. And I've continued my work in Italian politics. This is a sample of things that I've published in the realm of Italian politics. I'm particularly proud of this Politica in Italia, which is this publication that comes out once a year. I was the co-editor for it in 2018. It was a huge honor for me to be invited as the foreign Anglo author for this journal, because it comes out in both English and Italian, because the people who co-edited this volume in the past is an essentially who's who of people who study Italian politics. So it's a huge honor for me to be asked, and I'm very proud of this publication. So this is what I did. And so like I can trace this professional interest to those two very important decisions, the decision to take Italian 101 and then the decision to study abroad. So I really think that study abroad is important. So now that I'm at UMBC, as Dean Casper mentioned, I have been involved with developing study abroad programs on campus. And in 2016 and 2018, I led 2 study abroad programs. And I went to Siena, Italy, where I was able to teach Italian politics. And this past summer, as also mentioned, I accompanied a group of 29 incoming transfer and freshman students. Several of them are here today, which is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. But we went to Bristol in the United Kingdom, where I taught we taught comparative politics, and we were talking about electoral systems, political parties, ideology. We were talking about all these different things, and all the subjects that I've been studying for almost the past 30 years. And it was very, very exciting. It was quite wonderful. And indeed, I feel very strongly about study abroad, because I think that from the student's perspective, students who study abroad can expect a host of very positive outcomes. As a group, students who study abroad, they graduate at higher rates, they have higher grades, they go to the grad schools of their choice, they end up getting jobs in their chosen field, they command higher salaries. There's research that shows all of this to be supported. So from the student's perspective, there are a whole bunch of really good benefits that come about with study abroad. But it's more than that. It's not just about going to some foreign location and drinking cafe and piazzas and stuff like that. There's more to it, because from society's perspective, increasing internationalization is a good thing. We need citizens to be globally competent, to engage in the world in different ways. We need people to engage in intercultural communication and to adapt to new circumstances and to be more flexible with how they see things. That's what study abroad can do. So I feel very strongly that study abroad is something that we should encourage. Here at UMBC, we have 2% of our student population studying abroad compared to the national average of 10%. And I think that, maybe one thing we can work on is getting more students opportunities to study abroad. And I do want to make a particular appeal that we ensure that the opportunities we provide are available to as many students as possible. These should not be opportunities that are reserved for our most wealthy students who can, afford these programs. We have to think really hard about how to make sure that these opportunities are available to everyone. So as I conclude this brief talk, I would like to just kind of broaden this up a little bit because it's not just about study abroad and it's not just about students. I think that this is true for everyone because sometimes we just need to get out of our box. We need to embrace what I'm going to call extraordinary opportunities. I know that for me, study abroad was an extraordinary opportunity, but there are several things that people can do. Civic engagement, internships, research, all of these help us see the world in different ways, and they make us better citizens, and they make us more engaged. And so this is my final message. Embrace extraordinary opportunities, and extraordinary things will be more likely to happen for you. Thank you so much.